you ask Boyd Morrison how he's managed to build a career as a novelist with 13 books to his credit, he might respond, it's not rocket science. But before Morrison tried his hand at writing, his life was rocket science. As a mechanical engineer at Lockheed, Morrison worked on the Space Station Freedom Project, toying with everything from robotic arms, station mock-ups, and shuttle simulators, and even riding in NASA's infamous Vomit Comet. After returning to school for a PhD, Morrison worked at RCA, where he secured 11 US patents, before landing in the Xbox gaming group at Microsoft. Being paid to play video games to make sure they are as exciting and user-friendly as possible would be a dream job for most, but Morrison had a different dream. It began when he left his job to write and self-publish his first novel, The Ark. Later picked up by Simon & Schuster, The Ark featured protagonist Tyler Locke and was translated into 22 languages, kicking off a 4-book series. Morrison's work came to the attention of the legendary Clive Cussler, who tapped him to co-create the Oregon Files series featuring Juan Cabrillo. The fourth and final collaboration with the late, great Mr. Cussler, Marauder, pits the crew of the Oregon against a terrorist group determined to paralyze the globe.
This is Boyd Morrison, and you should watch the crew reviews.
Hey guys, we got Boyd Morrison in the house. Raise a drink. Welcome, Boyd.
Who's here?
Welcome, Boyd.
How are you?
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So, hey brother, your latest novel, Marauder, co-authored with the late great Clive Cussler, hit number 4 in the New York Times bestseller list. Congratulations.
Thank you.
The book is right over my right shoulder there. Can you give our audience just a quick summary of the story, like a 30,000-foot view?
Yeah, so this is the 15th book in the series, and Juan Cabrillo and the corporation, for those of you who are not familiar with the series, have this ship called the Oregon, and on the outside it looks like this rusty tramp steamer that's about to sink, and on the inside it's this high-tech warship with all kinds of fancy weapons and gadgets and helicopters and all kinds of fun stuff. And in this book, a fanatical Chinese nationalist has come up with a plan using a chemical weapon that will paralyze people, and that he is going to use to expand China's influence throughout the hemisphere, but finds out that he has cancer. And so he dies quickly thereafter, but has left a video to his stepdaughter and her husband, who are both felons. And he's promising them his $900 million if they will carry out his last wishes. And as part of that, one of the Oregon crew members becomes paralyzed by this weapon. And so the Oregon not only has to stop them from carrying out his plans, but also find the antidote for their crewmate.
So I read the idea about that, of the new ship, I guess is it the third iteration of the Oregon? I mean, I know it definitely it's the second iteration. I'm not sure.
Yeah, well, I mean, I didn't know how much you wanted me to talk about the previous book, Final Option, because for people who haven't read it, there's a big spoiler at the end. But if we think everybody watching has read that and has moved on to Marauder, I'm happy to let the cat out of the bag.
Well, no, I'm curious about the idea of the new ship, because I love the tech side of it, and reading how like all the new cool gadgets is awesome in the Oregon. But I heard it was your idea of what encapsulated inside the Oregon. Your last conversation with Clive, that's what that was about. And I was wondering if you could tell us a little about what went into that redesign, like the new weapons and the capabilities.
So there's a brand new ship in this book. And when Clive and I, so for those who don't know, Clive passed away in February. We had come up with the idea for the book, and I had also completed about the first 100 pages of the book and sent it to him. Mm-hmm. And as part of our planning for the book, we also planned the design of this new ship. And I needed to have a visual of what this looked like and what was on it. I'm not an artist, but I drew it up, a big sheet of paper. So I knew where everything was, so that when I'm describing in the book, I have a mental image of it. And I drew up this picture, and I sent an email of it to Clive, I think in January. And he sent me an email back, and it was very simple. He's very sparse writer, which is one thing I learned from him. And all it said was, a masterpiece, go forth and make Marauder a winner. And that was the last email I ever got from him.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Yikes.
So I really treasure that last contact with him.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, how, since we're talking about Clive and your work with Clive, what was that first moment like when somebody approached you and said, hey, how'd you like to take on one of the most iconic writers of all time?
Yeah.
What happened? Like, how did that transpire, and how did the whole process start?
Yeah, it was out of the blue. I had no idea I was even being considered for the opportunity. And I had written 6 books already, and was starting to think about what I was going to work on next. And my agent called me up and said, what would you think about working with Clive Cussler? And I said, oh, the guy I've been reading for 30 years or more? Yeah, I would love it. And she said, okay, he's going to call you back and call you in 2 minutes. And I said, okay. And I went crazy for about 2 minutes, and then my phone rang, and it was Clive. And he said, hey, Boyd, read a couple of your books and loved them, and loved how you did the endings, and wanted to know if you want to write the Oregon Files with me. And I said, that would be fantastic. And he said, okay, we're going to fly you down here and get started in a couple of weeks and see you soon. And that was the extent of the conversation. And sure enough, 2 weeks later, I'm sitting in his office at his house, and we're brainstorming our first book together, which was called Piranha.
That's insane.
Yeah, it was just, it was just totally out of the blue. But, I've often said that the book that got me interested in thrillers in the first place was Raise the Titanic. And so to be able to work with Clive, I mean, I read all his books. I learned a lot about storytelling from him, from reading him. And so to work with him was a real privilege and honor, and very exciting, of course.
Right. Well, speaking of which, what, and you've already kind of alluded to this, but what were some of the things that you did learn from Clive that you now see in your own writing, even outside of that particular series? Like, how did he influence you, and what were some of the nuggets that he presented to you that you've now taken on as kind of like who you are as an author? Yeah,
well, I mean, like I said, I've been reading him for more than 30 years when I started to work with him. So, and I loved his storytelling. It was so gripping. And so I think I internalized what I had been reading, which is why I was a good fit. And when he read my books, he probably saw a lot of himself reflected in me. I think he's, outstanding at getting the details right, but also not spending so much time on them that they bog down the story. He's really good at cliffhangers inside the book at the end of chapters that wants you to just keep reading the book and not put it down at all. And so I really tried to live up to that. And then once I started working with him, I just got, it's kind of a masterclass on how to just put in the nuggets that are necessary for the book and leave everything out. I mean, I don't think he ever really added anything to what I wrote. I think it was always taking it away to get to the essence of what the story is, because he knew his readers, he knew what they liked, and he knew that what they wanted was a fast-paced story that wasn't going to get so bogged down in details that you kind of just wanted to put the book down.
Sure.
And he was a really humble guy. I mean, I hope to, keep doing this. But one of the things, you know, Clive's been a New York Times bestseller for over 40 years. And he was so humble, and he never took himself too seriously. He always put in what he liked in the books, and he put himself into the books. If you read the Dirk Pitt books, he put himself into the book as a literal deus ex machina to save Dirk Pitt every time at a key point in the story. And he just did that as a lark one time. He just thought it would be goofy, and he thought his publisher would take it out as soon as they read it, but they liked it and they kept it in. And now people ask me about it in the Oregon Files, and he never did that in the Oregon Files. That was only in the Dirk Pitt books, but people liked it so much they were hoping he'd show up in all the other series as well. So, you know, when I see somebody as big as, you know, as huge of an author as he is, keep himself so humble, that's a really great lesson in, you know, no matter what happens, you're just still a writer trying to get somebody to read your book.
Yeah.
True. Well, we've had a couple pure writing teams on the show, but we've also had a couple people like you who have partnered with an icon to create a series, to continue a series, whatever the case may be. Can you take us through the mechanical aspect of the way your process went? You know, did you break the story together and then you go off and write? And then how did that work?
Well, he would, I would fly down to Phoenix where he lived, and I'd stay at his house. I mean, you know, I don't know. I think a lot of other co-writer writer relationships are different. They're not as personal, but I would go down. A lot of times my wife would come down with me, and we would go out to dinner with him, Clive and his wife. He'd let me drive his cars if I wanted to.
He's got some nice.
Okay, that's super cool. I want to talk about that.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And then what we would do is, just for a few days, I would sit in his office and we would brainstorm ideas for the story. And it was mostly, what's the villain after? What are the major locations in the book? What's the historical link? Because there always was some kind of historical backdrop to the story. And then maybe talk about some of the big action set pieces that we wanted to include. And that was pretty much it. And a lot of our time was just spent, you know, most of our work was just looking at the ceiling, wondering what to do next. And then sometimes I would come up with something that I would think is brilliant and go, okay, what if we have the terrorists who want to blow up the Panama Canal? And he would say, oh, we're doing that in a Dirk Pitt book right now. So he has written over 80 books. So coming up with something he hasn't done was the biggest problem that I had. So once we got those big ideas for the story, I would come home to Seattle and I would write 100 pages and send them to him, and he would revise it and send it back to me, and we would just keep going like that until the book was done.
Wow. Fantastic. Well, let me ask you a question. Before you had Clive Cussler in the room with you, did you break down stories the same way, or were you somebody who just started writing and took off?
I usually like to know where the story was going. I didn't write a detailed outline, but I'd like to know what the major beats in the story was. Most of the time I knew how the story would end. But a lot of it was just me struggling through it. Most of the time I would rewrite the beginnings of the book multiple times because I just couldn't figure out how to get it started. And then, you know, I think most authors will tell you that they bog down sometimes in the middle of the book because it can seem like there's some dead space in the middle when you're trying to get from the exciting beginning to the exciting end. Yeah. I usually like the middle of the book, but it's not easy, that's for sure. And my wife will tell you that because a lot of times I'll come downstairs from my office at 11:30 at night and go, I can't make this book work. This is awful. I'm going to give up and do something else for a living. I can't figure it out. And then she'll talk me down off the ledge and she'll say, what's the problem? I'm tired, but go ahead. And so we talk it through. And then, we'll be talking for a half an hour, and then all of a sudden I'll go, but what if they do this? And then she'll go, yeah, you got it now. Go up. And so, it's a strange combination for a writer. I'm sure you all know that sometimes you come down and you say, I'm the worst writer ever. I've lost it. I can't do this anymore. And then you get that what if, and then you go back upstairs and you pound out a chapter and you come down and say, I'm a genius. This book is going to be awesome.
I'm usually just the first part.
I was going to say, I usually feel like I'm a genius, right? And I'll go read it to my wife and she'll go, yeah, it doesn't make sense.
You should go back to Secret Service.
Yes, it does. No, go back.
We need that.
But Clive Cussler books like those of Dale Brown and James Rollins, they're filled with tons of futuristic weapons and machines, and Marauder, it's no different. And I love that stuff. But you also incorporated, and you alluded to it before, a nerve-like chemical weapon into the story. It's called a Nervum. And that stuff scared me, especially the scene with Sylvia Chang and the crew of the ship captained by her stepbrother, kind of like how everything gets started. I don't want to give away too much. But can you tell us what kind of research you conducted into Nervum that made it such a scary thing just to think about it?
Yeah, I was trying to think of what would be that, what would be, because most stories about terrorists are about killing people. And I thought, well, what would be worse than that? This is how writers think. I need to come up with something way worse than killing people. And so I thought, well, what if what came up with a drug that paralyzes somebody that could be dispersed? I mean, there are drugs that anesthesiologists use. You would know, right? I mean, Versed and some of I don't know all the names of them, but you can paralyze somebody and keep them awake. Mm-hmm. So it didn't seem so far-fetched that somebody could aerosolize a weapon like that. And so because there had to be a historical link, because this is a Clive Cussler book, I thought, well, where could a weapon like that come from? Yep. And then I've been to Australia a number of times, and one of the scariest things there is that every type of animal can kill you.
Yeah. Snakes.
They have the deadliest of every single type of species down there.
The worst.
And one of them is the box jellyfish. And if you get stung by one of those, you could die within minutes. And so I thought, well, what if there was a jellyfish? I mean, and this is how jellyfish hunt. They paralyze the fish and draw them in with their tentacles. Yeah. And I thought, well, that could be the source of this weapon. And so, I put all those things together. I don't know if it's really true, but it sounds like it could be true. And so that's really, as a fiction writer, that's all we need, right?
Close enough, right?
Oh,
yeah. I didn't like that stuff. I thought it was in like it's not giving away too much, but like the Morse code. She's like, what is the tab when with their stepbrother? Like, and that's the way he was communicating, because they're paralyzed. And I was like, holy shit, these people are trapped inside their bodies. And right. What if that got out? Wasn't, what if it just wasn't on the ship? Like, I got to keep turning the page. Like you were saying, the cliffhangers at the end, like at the end of the chapters, like keep turning the page. Like, holy shit, where's this going?
Yeah. And then just thinking about the end game of what happens if you use this on an epic scale.
All right. Well, Boyd, if you bring back this disease, I got no disease, but this particular agent, I got an idea for you. There's an actual, there's something there. I think you and I need to do a follow up on this. It'd be pretty cool. Well, let's go back to the young Boyd Morrison. Let's talk young Mr. Youngster here.
Younger.
Yeah. No.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're all.
I think we're way past young.
Yeah, we're in the 50 range, so we're good.
Yeah.
So I come from a long line of engineers in my family, and I'm keenly aware that creative writing, and much less acting, is usually present in the DNA of the Pocket Protector Society. Since you display both sides of the brain, was there any decision process or struggle early on in your life where you kind of decided what direction you were going to go early on for a career?
Well, I've had a lot of career changes, but you know, like you, I come from a long line of engineers. My grandfather was an engineer. My father was a chemical engineer. My brother was an aerospace engineer.
Jeez.
And
Underachievers,
yeah,
all of
yeah.
them.
No math there.
And one time, my mom asked, you know, my dad, who's a chemical engineer, she asked him if he would mind if I decided to do something that wasn't his career. And my dad said, well, no, he can be any kind of engineer he wants to be.
I love that generation.
So I was kind of ordained. So I went to school and got a degree in mechanical engineering, and then went back and got a couple of graduate degrees in engineering. And I thought, well, that's what I'm going to do. And it was during my PhD research that I was doing for Kodak in Rochester, and I didn't know anybody there, and we didn't have anything to do at night. So my wife suggested that she has suggested many of the things that have turned out well for me. And one of them was she saw that a local Hugo Award-winning science fiction writer named Nancy Kress was giving a science fiction writing course once a week. And I thought, okay, well, I not only was I a big thriller fan when I was young, but I was also a huge science fiction fan.
Yeah.
And so I thought, okay, well, I'll try it. And I took the class and I wrote a really awful short story for it. I don't even know if I have it anymore, but I would be too scared to go back and look at it. And so, you know, it didn't go well, but I thought, well, maybe short story isn't my thing. Maybe novel length is better for me. And so I got an idea and stupidly started writing it when I was writing my dissertation. I still don't know how I did that at the same time. It's crazy. And I finished that book back in '95, I guess, and sent it around to a couple of 4 or 5 agents, and I actually got some nice responses, but no agent with it. And that was around the time that my wife decided she wanted to go to med school. But she was an English major in college, and so she had never taken a college level science course. And so we made a deal that I would keep working and support her while she did 9 years of pre-med, med school, and residency. And then when she was practicing physician, I would get to quit my job and I would get the same 9 years to try to become a published author. And so sure enough, when she finished residency and got a job, I could start mooching off of her. And I quit my job at Microsoft. I was only there for a couple of years, so don't think I was one of those Microsoft millionaires or anything. And started writing full time, and I wrote 2 more books, and finally got published with the 3rd book after 5 years of that.
Hey, so well, hold on, Sean, because he mentioned, you know, we knew you were a mechanical engineer, but you mentioned that you're not an artist and you drew the ship. I guarantee you it's not like how I would draw the ship. It's probably you have like all the decks, right? And the elevators for where the helicopter comes down and where the medical bay is and all that stuff. I guarantee you have all that. And I would love to see that later.
Yeah, somebody asked me and I'm like, I don't know if I ever want to share this publicly because it would be kind of embarrassing.
Oh, you haven't seen embarrassing.
You're giving me way more credit than I deserve. That's for sure.
Well, kind of along the same lines you were talking in response to Mike, I know from experience that technical writing is vastly different from creative writing.
Yeah.
Your prior work experience required a lot of the former. So in what ways did the technical writing experience, in what ways was it an asset to your creative writing, and was it in any way a hindrance?
That is a great question. And I think what people don't realize about engineers is that they have to be very creative, because when they come across a problem, they have to find a creative solution for it. That's what engineering really is all about, is you using your creative mind to do something that nobody's ever done before. And so in that way, that's how I used my right brain. The left brain side of the engineering equation, I think helps me plot out the stories so that they make sense, because I think about it in a very linear fashion. I've heard some other authors say, oh, if I get stuck, I'll just write if I'm stuck on chapter 4, I'll just go write chapter 48. And I have no idea how somebody could do that. It's crazy to me.
That's what I do.
I have to do chapter 4 before I do chapter 5. That's just the way it
That
is.
seems
But
reasonable.
I think by the time I get done with the book, everything makes sense in it. And especially with Clive's books, being an engineer helps because there's, as Chris mentioned, there's so much technology in it. And because I know how to do literature research, that's what doing research is a lot of what these books are, because there's research about the technology, there's research about the locations, because they're always in exotic places, many places I have never been in my life.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to be able to research that. And then also researching the history behind them, because that's something Clive's readers love, is getting that historical context for the story. And usually it's a jumping off point of something real in history, but it's a mystery that nobody's ever solved. And so we put our own spin on it to give our idea of what happened. And so I think all of that engineering background helps me kind of piece those together in a way that makes them kind of fit and makes the plot run.
Yeah,
I think that's why you were a perfect fit for the organ file books.
Yeah, I think that was the best series for me to fit into. Sure.
But your journey to becoming a published author, it's a little bit different than most. You talked about it just briefly, but I wanted you to talk about it a little bit more, because I think it might inspire some authors who might be looking to go the self-publishing route, maybe. So can you tell our audience how, with the blessing of your agent, what happened with your self-published The Ark and your first 2 books when they went to Kindle?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I wrote my second book after my wife became a physician, and I didn't get an agent with that. And then I wrote my third book, and that was called The Ark. And that was the one I finally got an agent for. And we did some revision before she started trying to sell it. And she sent it out, I think, to 26 publishers. Mm-hmm. And we got what I call rave rejections.
Oh, I love those.
where they love the idea. They thought, it was a good story, but they just couldn't figure out where to place it in their list or how they would sell it. I don't know, various different reasons. And so once we got to 25 or 26 rejections, we thought, well, I guess maybe this isn't happening. And around that time, I guess it was early 2009 that the Kindle 2 came out and Amazon started their self-publishing platform. Mm. And I thought, well, these books are nobody's reading them. So, it wouldn't hurt to put them out there for people to check out. And so I put them on, all 3 of the books, on Amazon. And it was me and about 4 other people who were doing it at the time. Just because nobody thought at that time that people would read a self-published book on their Kindle. I mean, that was just crazy at the time. And within 3 months, all 3 of my books were, I think, in the top 200 on Amazon. Maybe even the top 100 sometimes. I don't know. I can't remember. But because of that, they were doing so well. I mean, I was selling thousands of books a month. Wow. And all of a sudden it seemed, wow, you can actually make some, get a decent number of people reading your books. And so my agent, armed with this new information, went out to publishers, and we got a deal for The Ark and its sequel with Simon & Schuster. And they decided to publish my other 2 books as well, one of which was 15 years old at that time. And so, I revised those 2 books and made them more up to date. And now they're published in multiple languages. But, I think one of the things, new writers, and I was the same, was you get really frustrated about how long it can take. And, one of the, I say it a lot, is one of the key traits of somebody who gets published or somebody who gets a book out that people are reading is resilience, because you never know which book it's going to be. And so when I meet people at conferences, I get sad when I see people there pitching the same book they've had for the past 3 years, because like I said, you never know which book is going to be the one that hits. And so if you're there pitching the same book over and over, you're not only do you not get that opportunity for another book, but you're also not getting the practice that you need of learning your craft. And I think by writing multiple books, you learn what worked and what didn't in the previous book. And now you can use that information on your next book. And if you're only working on that one book over and over, you're not getting that experience. So I would always recommend somebody who comes to the pitch fest at a conference, if they're pitching a book and maybe they get some good interest, maybe not, next year, come with a different book. Yeah. And the other reason is if you want to do this, if that's the only book you're ever going to write, then yeah, work on it to your heart's content. But if you want to do this as a business, as a career, as soon as you get a publishing deal for that book, the publisher is going to say, what else do you have? Right. What are we doing next? And we want it next year.
Yeah.
And that's so you might as well get used to producing a book a year anyway. And it's much better to do that learning experience when you're unpublished than it is to suddenly be under that pressure if Random House or HarperCollins comes along and says, we want that next book and you need to write it in the next 10 months.
That's terrific advice.
And it took you 6 years.
So I have a question.
Writing is the best practice, is the best experience.
Is it true that the only revision you had to do of your first books was to take cell phones from this big to this big?
Yeah. Well, when I wrote my first book, there weren't even cell phones. I mean, I had people going around to pay phones and trying to find a phone book to look up somebody's number. And so, yeah, and it really changed the plot, when they're trying to find an address and they don't know how to get it, when they could just pick up their phone and Google it.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Or they need a map and they have to stop at a gas station instead of just, telling Siri to tell me how to get there.
Yeah.
What do you mean it
really changed that. I had to spend a lot of time on that plot to make sure it made sense in this day and age.
It is amazing because that could literally, like you say, be pages and pages of plot. It reminds me of there's a meme that has a Radio Shack ad from 1988 and it has like 35 items. And then it shows a cell phone, and every single one of those items sold at Radio Shack is now.
Yeah. I've seen that. Yeah. That's absolutely. Yeah. Well, and it also changed how thriller writers write their stories, because back in that day, if you were not by a phone, you couldn't get help, and so you were on your own.
Right.
Now you could be almost anywhere in the U.S., and if somebody's chasing you, you say, call the police. And that totally changes the story.
Well, you're not just a self-published author. You're also a New York Times best-selling author. And so, which is really the pinnacle of any author's, hope and dreams as a career, is to hit that list. And I'm sure it's all puppies and kittens up to a point. So what is the downside? If you think hard enough, for a lot of folks, I bet you could come up with a couple of things. What is the downside of being somebody who's expected to be on that list time and again?
Well, I mean, the biggest thing is pressure.
Yeah.
Every one of the things I read, I read Tess Gerritsen's blog.
Right.
And back, I don't know, it must have been about 10 years ago when I was just getting started. She had written, I think, 12 or 15 books, some big number. And, but she wrote a blog where she said, okay, it's this next book that people are going to know I'm a fraud and I can't figure it out. And I don't know what I'm doing. I've just been fooling them all this time. And I thought, what? Are you crazy? You're New York Times bestselling author Tess Gerritsen. You've wrote hugely successful books. And how could you possibly have any doubts about yourself? And now that I'm on this, Marauder is my 12th book, and I've been published for 10 years now, and I completely get it, because every book could be the one that proves that you don't know what you're doing, or it's just, you've had all these ideas, and now the well is dry and you don't have anything left. And that was true, for the first, I don't know, 2 or 3 books with Clive. I had built up a number of ideas from my life about, action scenes and ideas for plots and things like that in stories. And so I was drawing on all of those for those first 2 or 3 books with Clive. And then the 4th book, I was out. I didn't have anything left in the well. It was all brand new stuff that I was coming up with. And that got really hard. And especially when, everything seems to have been done by Clive. And so, yeah, it's living up to readers' expectations is definitely the hardest part of being up there.
Which is crazy because Tess Gerritsen, I've met her, and she actually gave me my award that I won for my last book.
Oh, great.
She is supremely confident, but and then to hear her, talk about the self-doubt somewhere in that mind is just mind-boggling. So just to picture somebody who's not that at her level and what they go through.
Well, and it's very reassuring to somebody, starting out that everybody is in the same boat. We all have that, and I think we all as writers have to have the right combination of hubris, where we go, well, of course, I have a great idea and a story that people should read. And then on the other hand, thinking, I have no idea what I'm doing, and this is awful, and I don't know if anybody will ever read this. And so you have to have the hubris part to keep going and get that book done. But you have to also have the self-doubt part that makes you constantly try to improve your craft.
Yeah.
And I think if you're too far one or the other, then you really getting out of balance like that can, if you too much self-doubt, you never finish the book. Too much hubris, you're like those people on American Idol who think they're fantastic singers, and then they come in and really
they're not
sing like a cat being strangled.
How many authors have we talked to who have suffered that imposter syndrome?
All of them.
They're all New York Times bestsellers or award-winning. All of them. They're like, yeah, no, the next book, like you said, the next book, they're going to find out that I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Book 20.
I mean, there's a lot of psychology to being a writer.
Yeah.
And I know you talked about that with Barbara Powell. She talks people down off the ledge all the time. And
she does.
Writers are very fragile. I am definitely.
Barbara Powell is not, by the way.
No, she is not fragile, but she, deals with a lot of fragile egos.
We love her.
Well, you've been at this a while, Boyd. You've got what, 10 books out with, how many total do you have?
12, 6 of my own and 6 with Clive.
Right. Okay, so New York Times, self-published, New York Times bestseller. What's left for you out there when you look ahead to your career in the next 10, 20 years? What is still out there for you at the top of that hill that you're still searching for and still kind of trying to achieve?
Well, for one thing, the books that I am a New York Times bestseller on have Clive Cussler in big letters at the top. So it's no mystery about why those books are bestsellers. And it's not because of me. I certainly contribute to making them good books, hopefully. But Clive's his name is the reason that the books are selling. So doing my own books and getting on the list would be great. But I have also been doing this long enough now to get a little perspective. And now it's more about doing the stories that I want to do, that I'm interested in doing. And hopefully other people will like them just as much as I do. But it's really what kind of story do I want to tell, and focusing on that. And that's one reason that I've decided Marauder is going to be my last book in the Oregon Files series. And I told Clive 2 books ago that I was going to do that because I wanted to go back and write my own stories again. And he was disappointed, but he understood why I wanted to do that, and wished me well, which was great. And so now it's time for me to see, what I can do on my own. And I've got lots of ideas for stories, and really time is the biggest factor. And that was part of the issue with, Clive's books take a lot of time.
Yeah.
And so I really felt like I needed to strike out on my own, get the bird pushed out of the nest kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And or it's actually more like jumping off the cliff and sewing my parachute together as I'm falling.
Yeah, as you're falling.
Yeah.
Hurry up, Boyd. Get that shit together.
Yeah, but that's the only way I would. Otherwise, I'd never sew the parachute together. So
Yeah.
I had to jump off the cliff to give me the pressure to do that.
Yep.
So.
Burn the boat. Yep.
I think you're gonna land just
Yeah. I'm burning the boat.
Yep.
Well, Boyd, I'm not sure how many of your readers know this, but you have extensive experience acting, whether it be on stage or in commercials, on film, and you've been a stand-up comedian. What I want to know is, has that experience made you a better writer?
Yes, absolutely. One of the things that I think about when I'm writing and from my acting experience is when I see a role that I want to take, what excites me about that role? Why would I want to play that? And so I kind of take that into consideration when I'm creating the characters in my books. Because if I've never had a book turned into a movie, but if it was, each of the characters I write, is there some interesting thing to play in that for an actor? And that, I think, helps me create characters that are more memorable. If they're just ciphers that are advancing the plot, they wouldn't be something I would have any interest playing in a movie or on the stage. And so that definitely contributes to it. It's also just a great change for me because, when you're a writer, you're sitting at home, you're by yourself, you're in charge of everything. I often talk about it. If it were a movie, I would be playing all the roles. I'm the director, I'm the writer, I'm the set designer, I'm the special effects guy, I'm the costumer. I have to do everything.
Yeah.
And when I go do a play, I am only responsible for my part. I'm up on my feet, I'm collaborating with other people, and I have a director telling me what to do. So I can just think about my one little part. And so, it's a good balance if I'm writing during the day and then doing a play at night. It's a 180-degree difference in experience. And so, it's also good for my mental health to do that.
Well, as somebody who's done stand-up as well, I want to ask you this question. Which was more intimidating, your first experience doing stand-up or attacking that first novel?
Stand-up.
I can only imagine.
Factual.
Because when you're doing a novel, nobody sees you do it. If you fail, nobody has to know.
Yeah.
But if you fail at stand-up, not only do they know, they boo you off the stage because you didn't do well. So yeah, it was.
And not only that, you could do the very same show, not back to back, and one night you could kill, and the next night the audience could sit there looking at you with blank stares, and it was exactly the same delivered.
Oh yeah.
joke.
Oh yeah. No, I definitely had that with stage productions where we do a show in the afternoon and a show in the evening. I did a play called Noises Off, which I think is one of the funniest shows ever written. And I love doing comedies. And I think we had a fantastic cast. And we did the afternoon show and there was nothing. It was dead. I think we got done in like 2 hours straight, And then we did the night show and we were pausing, 10, 15 seconds for every laugh. And it was probably a half an hour longer just because of the laughter. And so, yeah, you just never know what it's going to be like. And you just have to do it. You just keep doing it. And I'm sure that's the way it was with your stand-up too. You just power through it. I don't know if there's any, what do you think? Do you think there was anything you learned from the shows that were bombs versus shows that were where you kill?
Yeah, some people just don't have a sense of humor.
Right.
I honestly, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know because literally, I remember we used to videotape my shows and you would look at it and performance-wise, it was exactly the same. But if the vibe's not right, and you never know what causes the vibe not to be right either. But I completely believe you when you say that was more intimidating than attacking your first book, because there's very few things more intimidating than doing stand-up, in my opinion.
Yeah, public speaking in general, I think, is usually at the top of many people's fear lists.
Yeah.
Trying to make people laugh, though.
And that's even bigger.
It's hard.
Because you know when it's not working.
Well, boys, that is the end of our traditional interview part. Now we're going to try to make people laugh.
First, we're going to toast Tim for surviving.
Raise a glass.
Yes.
I mean, it's always an excuse to have a drink.
One of many.
So we're going to do the lightning round. We're going to ask you silly questions. We haven't put any thought into it. Please don't put any thought into your answer. So stream of consciousness, whatever you think.
Stand up. Oh my God.
Just blurt it out. Hopefully we laugh. Hopefully it's funny. Hopefully our audience finds it funny. Otherwise, they won't turn back in next month.
We'll set it out.
Pressure here.
No pressure. No pressure. All right. So I'm going to start off. You said you liked sci-fi stuff when you were a kid early on. You probably still read it now. I still do. So Star Trek or Star Wars, the eternal question, eternal debate, which one is better and why?
I would say Star Trek. I'm a big Star Wars and Star Trek fan, but just the depth of the worlds in Star Trek, just because there've been so many series over 40 years, 50 years now.
Right.
Just there's something for everyone in them, and they're action packed, but they're also very thoughtful. And so, yeah, I like that balance.
We are in agreement. Star Trek is my thing. Okay.
Baby Yoda.
No. Star Trek, Data, Jean-Luc Picard. I mean, come on. So this little tidbit I found interesting about you and doing a little deep dive into your background. When you worked for NASA, you had the opportunity to fly on the Vomit Comet.
Yes.
That's so awesome. But was it fun? Or 5 minutes in, were you like, okay, get me off this damn thing?
It was a blast. This is something people pay thousands of dollars to do, and I got to do it. I got paid to do it, which was awesome.
Nice.
And I flew on it 3 times.
3 times.
And I will say I never threw up. So, but they give you heavy drugs. But even so, I would say about
Wait a minute. They drug you up before you get on, and then they
give you a patch you put on your neck that's a combination of scopolamine, dexedrine.
Yeah.
So the scopolamine is kind of like Dramamine, but it makes you really drowsy.
So it's a little sleepy,
which is pumps you up. So yeah, you're by the end of it, you're both wired and exhausted. But I never threw up, but I would say even with the drug, I'd say about half of the people who flew on it got sick. But not only did I get to be in zero gravity, but I did a flight where we were testing different floorings that could have been on a lunar or Mars station. And so we did a test where we tested out the how we could walk across these different flooring materials, both in Earth, Moon, lunar, and Mars gravity. So I got to experience what it felt like to walk on the moon, which was pretty amazing.
That is cool. Super cool. Well, let me ask you, when you get onto the Vomit Comet, does it smell, or do they?
Well, it doesn't smell like vomit, but the entire interior is padded with foam. And I think the foam has some kind of off-gassing smell. And so it doesn't put your stomach into the greatest position
hospital
right
room.
From the beginning. But the drugs worked on me. So I'm very glad. But I love every time we flew in zero gravity, you fly 40 parabolas, which is how the plane goes. And you get 25 seconds of zero gravity every time. And usually our experiments, we would be done by about the 35th or so parabola. And so we'd have 4 or 5 where we could just play around and spin and, and it's so funny when I see zero gravity in movies, especially older movies. They've gotten better about it, but where they're always moving in slow motion, and that is not, you can go zooming down the whole interior of the plane really fast. So it was a blast.
So my final question is, you're a Jeopardy champion. right?
Mhm.
On your second go around, though, you didn't answer the final question, right? How often do you think about the answer to that one? And is it seared in your
I
brain?
never would have gotten it in a million years. But what killed it for me was before that, I got the Double Jeopardy. And I bet enough that if I had won that, I would have been more than twice as much as the second place person. So I would have been guaranteed a win.
Yeah.
And it was the question of which amendment gave the women the right to vote. And I said the wrong one.
Oh, wow.
And if I had said the right one, I would have won that game too. But my wife was there. She watched it, and she said after the second game, she would have had a heart attack if I kept going because it was so tense.
So nerve-wracking for her.
Yeah.
That's
She
so
said it was so nerve-wracking to watch me. Yeah.
Do they give did you get like a Champions Cup for winning that day? Does Jeopardy give you something, or just the money?
Yeah, just money. That was fine.
I'll take that.
Right.
Yeah, it was good.
You can have the cup, Chris. I'll take
I'll take
This is gold bully on it.
It was very sad about Alec. I lost Clive and Alex Trebek and Sean Connery, and it's been
Big year.
2020, yay.
been a 2020.
It's funny though. I kind of expected Saturday Night Live to do a tribute to both of them since they died so close in proximity, and they do that Jeopardy skit with both of them.
All right.
I expected Heavenly Jeopardy, and haven't done it yet.
Right.
Yeah, they should. That's a great idea.
It'll come.
All right, my turn.
Yeah.
How worried was your family you were throwing away an honest career for this writing thing?
After I wrote my first book is when I made my deal with my wife, and she saw something there. She said, I think you can do this for a living. I don't think I would have tried it without her. It helps being married to a doctor. It's not like we were
Sure, you're not going to lights
on
are
the
going to
street
stay on.
if I didn't make it, and I could always go back to my other job. But what I was surprised about was when I left Microsoft. I thought my colleagues would go, what are you doing? Are you crazy leaving a job at Microsoft to go try to be a writer with no guarantee that it will ever happen?
Yeah.
And I was shocked. I never had one single person at Microsoft say that to me, but I did have a number of people take me aside and go, I am so jealous of you for doing what you want to do.
Yeah.
And so, I think it's really a privilege to be able to, I know how lucky I am that I was able to do that I had that cushion to be able to do that. Not a lot of people have that.
Right.
Most people are writing while they're working, and that's just what they have to do. And so I am definitely lucky that I had that. It was also an investment in my wife. I spent 9 years helping her through med school, but I had a lot of people who said they wish they could do that, and I was very surprised about that.
Yeah, I did not have anybody say, "What are you doing?" I wish I could follow you. You're nuts. All right, number 2. Which job on the Oregon are you most suited for?
Most suited for? I'd probably say the weapons position. Because I worked at Microsoft for a couple of years in the Xbox group, and that was because I played video games a lot. And so I think, shooting the Oregon's guns would have been right up my alley.
Those guns are super cool.
Yeah, that would have been pretty cool.
Yeah, and they got even cooler in this book.
Oh.
So.
Yeah, they did, brother.
All right, number 3.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a fellow writer, married to a physician as well. I'm all too aware our wives could kill us and get away with it. What do you think your wife's method of choice would be, or has she already hinted at what it would be?
Oh, I definitely think it would be a poison that couldn't be found on a talk screen. I mean, that nice. She would do it so subtly, though. She's so good at. She's thrown all kinds of surprise parties for me, and I have never figured it out. Oh. And so I think, but I have taken my own seminars on poison, so hopefully
either way, right?
If it was happening, I could suss it out.
I'm worried.
As you were dying, you'd be like, "That's what that is."
I'd write the note.
I know it.
I wish I'd have used that one.
Okay, I'm last. So after you finished your first book with Mr. Cussler, which of the cars in his incredible collection did he give you as a thank you gift?
Nice.
Yeah, right. No.
Which one would you have asked for if he'd have said thank you?
But I have only ridden the cars that he let me drive were not the old cars.
Oh.
They were his nicer, newer cars. But I've ridden in one of his older cars, and that was a 1931 Ford Model A. And it was when I went to visit him with my writer friends, Chris Kuznetsky and Graham Brown, who also writes, Graham also writes with Clive. And he wanted to show us the car and take us for a ride. And he was driving, and you would not believe how fast an 80-year-old car can go, 90-year-old car can go. I mean, we were doing 55 miles an hour down the street with absolutely no safety equipment whatsoever.
Awesome.
Of course, I'm in the front seat. Graham and Chris are in the rumble seat. Clive's driving. He's focused totally on the road, which he should be. And we're roaring down. We get to this roundabout, and I'm in the passenger seat. He goes around this roundabout probably at 30, 35 miles an hour. My door flies open. I have no seatbelt on.
Ooh.
I have nothing to hold on to except the dashboard, which is about 5 feet in front of me because the car is huge. And I'm just holding on for dear life because I know the headline would be, Clive Cussler kills co-author. And so
part of the plan.
Barely stayed in. And of course, Chris and Graham were just laughing behind me. But, Chris was probably going, oh, a new series for me to take over. But yeah.
Why did you kick me, Chris? What are you doing?
But I barely stayed in. I don't think Clive even noticed. He was so focused on driving.
That's awesome.
Okay, question number 2. In your time at Lockheed and working with NASA, did you ever get disgusted with a coworker and utter the phrase, "It's not rocket science," and then realize it actually was rocket science?
Yeah. Well, that was what we would say at NASA is it's not rocket science, it's brain surgery. So yeah, it's we had a lot of fun at NASA. I mean, I got to not only fly on the Comet, but I got to go in the space shuttle simulator, the space station simulator. I got to go on the they had this thing that would help you train to move things around in zero gravity, and it was like on a giant ice hockey or a air hockey table.
Oh wow!
You're in this seat that's on a cushion of air, trying to move these things around with you and learning, how inertia works in zero gravity. And so it was a great time. I was only there 2 years, but I got to do some really fun stuff.
Awesome.
Okay. My final question is a little bit inside baseball in the Boyd Morrison theater world. Leading Ladies is optioned as a film, and you were offered the same part you played on stage. Does Boyd take the part?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's one of my favorite roles ever. For those of you who don't know, Leading Ladies is a comedy. It's a farce where I played one of 2 actors who are down on her luck, and we read this newspaper story about this old woman who's trying to find her long lost nieces from England, and we were playing English actors, and long lost nephews from England, and we decide to pretend to be her nephews so we can get the inheritance. And right before we get there, we find out they're not nephews, they're nieces. Oh. So we have to play them as women. And of course, all these hilarious incidents ensue, and then I show up as my own male self and say that I'm a friend of the Maxine, who is the female I was playing. And so in that play, I not only got to dress as a woman, but I also got to fight with a broadsword in the opening scene. So
what else is there?
You have that combination at any other time. So yeah, I would take that role in a minute.
You know what's fantastic? That's how we're going to end the show.
Yeah, you can't top that.
Which one, the broadsword or dressed as women?
Yes.
All
exactly.
of it.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm there.
Hey, Boyd, you've been a fantastic guest. Want to thank you for coming on. Marauder was a New York Times bestseller. for a reason, and it's just not because Clive Cussler's name is on it. It's because you wrote a hell of a book, dude.
Yeah.
It was
Thank you.
fantastic. Congrats. And until next time, cheers.
Thanks for having me. It's been a lot of fun.
Cheers.
Hey, boys, we had Boyd Morrison today on our show talking about Marauder, the latest Oregon Files Clive Cussler book. It was awesome. It was fantastic. Like I always like to say, Boyd Morrison was awesome. He was such a great guest. Some really cool stories. And his background is ridiculous. He is smarter than smart, as I was just saying before. It makes me feel dumb. But he writes awesome books. Loved it. Let's raise a glass to him. Boyd, thanks for coming on. Mike, put up a glass.
Thank you, sir.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next Monday
On the
Raise
crew
Dan
reviews.
podcast on the Crew Reviews.
Yes. And
There's no getting this done in one take.
Board.
Hey, listen,
It's late.
our guests got it in first one take. You need to get it in one take.
Yeah.
Dude, that means I'm
Screw
screwed.
this up.
Listen, it's late at night, drinking during the show, and who did we
Sounds like an
interview?
excuse.
It is.
Here
Very
it
much.
comes.
Tired.
This is the outro for Boyd Morrison, and this is Christopher Albanese, and he's been drinking, and he's a little blurry right now. I don't know if it's him or the camera.
Oh my gosh, why am I blurry?
Oh, this
Could
is
be your eyes, Mike.
It's just you.
Is it me?
In 3, 2,
No,
Gee.
no, I'm not ready yet. Do it again.